Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Pediatric Chat. My name is Jay Greenspan. I'm Chair of Pediatrics, and as always, joining me in Pediatric Chat is Paul Rosen. Hi, Paul.
Hey there, Jay.
This time we have back and as our expert, Chris Calamaro. You may recall that she gave us a great chat on pediatric sleep, and we had so many questions that we've brought her back for more. Chris is a sleep specialist, is a nurse by training and a PhD, and practices both clinically and has sleep practice and has done quite a bit of research on sleep. And so she really is a national expert, and we're so pleased to have her. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Jay, and hi, Paul.
Hey, Chris.
We have joining us a new group of moms. We are recording actually in Villanova, Pennsylvania at one of the Nemours practices, home of the Villanova champion Wildcats. It's a
Go
basketball
Cats.
team. In a beautiful facility on a beautiful day. So we want to welcome our moms and I'll let them introduce themselves.
I'm Aryn, and I have two boys, 6 and 9 years old.
I am Laura, and I am the mother of a 2.5-year-old daughter.
And also joining us today is a medical student from Jefferson who happened to be roped into our Pediatric Chat conversation.
Hi, I'm Marley Medora. I'm a third-year medical student at Jefferson.
Great. So kicking off, Chris,
Yes.
any opening comments for us on sleep?
Oh, so it's the summer, and typically kids don't have a regular schedule. So I would love to hear how moms are working to run around, have fun, yet maintain some routine in their lives through the summer. Typically, I think it's almost problematic that we sleep experts really don't tend to, I shouldn't say worry, but when parents come in, we focus more on the school schedule and how sleep impacts that. But the problem with that is we ramp up for school through the end of July and August. Any late nights that have been entrenched into, a child's summer and fun and all of that, it makes it difficult that week right before school to get them back on a normal routine. So we can touch upon that if you have any questions about that.
I have a lot of questions about that, actually.
Oh, please ask.
So both of my boys are playing soccer 2 nights a week, and we don't get home from there until after 8. And then they need to shower and they need to get rest. And they're not in bed typically on Tuesdays and Thursdays before 9. And I think that that's probably generous. And then I find myself waking them up the next day for camp. And my 9-year-old has probably been up 3 times in the middle of the night also. So what, if anything, aside from skipping soccer, can I do to help them get a better routine when we get home? It's crazy, it's chaotic, everyone's screaming and yelling and we're rushing and it's not good. It's really just not good in our house.
It's tough. They're the kind of schedules that do get crazy. Is it like that in the fall? Do you have soccer 2 nights a week?
I'm not 100% sure. We generally have soccer 1 night a week in the fall, but they also have Hebrew school 1 night, but it's not that late. I think it's later. It tends to be later in the summer because it's light out later.
Right. So the great thing for your children is that they're getting exercise. Sometimes the flip side to that is that when people exercise at night, instead of calming us and relaxing us, it really depends on the individual. For some kids, it's a stimulant. They're revved up, they're ready to go, and it's really difficult to settle them. So when you get home, what I would really recommend that you do is, if you can, limit any kind of technology when they get home. Limit the television. Really try to have everyone chill, whether it's a small snack before bed, their baths, their showers, and then some reading with a kind of a dimmer light. Just that regular schedule that slows everyone down typically helps that nighttime settle in, because it really is. You're right. There's no way that you can change your schedule, but what you can do is maybe calm it down at night, even if it means separating them if they're irritated with one another because they're hot and sweaty. That's really sometimes the benefit if you do that, is just calming everyone down, getting everyone to slow down before bed. And I find that recommendation, and usually they talk about that with the National Sleep Foundation, is, quieting down that evening routine, keeping it the same, keeping everyone on the same schedule at night up through school age has been very, very helpful.
So even a 9-year-old benefits from the same kind of routine every night.
Correct. And where it gets to be tricky is as they hit adolescence and they want more independence, because truly as puberty, and it's hard to think about that with a 2-year-old, but it does come, right? As puberty, that's right. And you're getting closer to it. As puberty really starts to set in, that's when kids become night owls. We know just even hormonally and from just all the changes that go on that pre-adolescent to adolescent stage, we see real changes in sleep. And definitely you see that happen, and then you have to adjust your schedule for it. But again, even in what we call entrenching those behaviors early really helps that adolescent then when they hit that age where they want to stay up.
Do you think that trying to put them to bed earlier on the nights that they're not having activities helps? I mean, can you really catch up on sleep?
You can, and you'll see sometimes weekends they do. What really is recommended is that they're up in the morning. You're doing a good job. Believe it or not, camp's probably helping them. What's probably the frustration is they do need more sleep because they're going to bed late those 2 nights. What time do they typically go to sleep on the off?
I'd like them in bed at 7, but it's closer to like 7:30.
Yeah, which is great. 8 o'clock is a good time to get them settled. If you have the dimming shades, that helps quite a bit since it's summer and it's later. So if you can do that on the days that they don't have soccer, I would recommend that just to help them. There's really no true catch up, we know, with sleep, even though we call it sleep debt. And that's why you see children sleep in on the weekends, but we recommend that you don't allow them, that you try to keep them on somewhat of the same schedule even on the weekends, because that helps them on Sunday night when Sunday night rolls around and it's school the next day. And I hope the medical student's paying attention, because probably Sunday night she's up late, right? When Mondays roll around, then they're able to get up easily and you're not struggling to awaken them in the morning.
And how long before bed should they be off the electronics and the television and all of that stuff?
So we have recommendations. And I have to tell you, the recommendations are around 1 to 2 hours, which sometimes is difficult for families when it's homework. What I find, and Marlene, I don't know if you remember this when you're in high school, what I find even with school age now through high school is that with all the multitasking, I think, in fact, what came up for me recently was Pokemon Go. Kids were out late playing Pokemon Go, so they have that screen with their cell phones that kind of tricks the mind into thinking, or the brain into thinking it's still daytime, and it pushes back our melatonin. It pushes back those hormones that help us sleep. So the more you can decrease technology within that 1 to 2 hours before bed, the more it does help them fall asleep easily and readily. There you go. So
Aryn, you mentioned he gets up a couple times during the night.
Yeah.
This is your 9-year-old.
My 9-year-old.
Why is that?
Yeah.
So
that was my next question. Thank you,
I generally
Jay.
think it's because I screwed it up as when he was an infant, to be honest. He used to wake up and I'd go in and I'd nurse him and he'd eventually fall asleep and I would very gingerly put him back in his crib until he woke up. I don't know. I mean, Dr. McNett thinks it's because he's used to it and he comes in and we tuck him back in and it's like his check-in. And we haven't really been able to break him of it. I will say that now that he's more tired, he's probably closer to 1 time, maybe 2. He also, I should say, the 9-year-old gets up very early in the morning. During the school year is like a 5:45. He's about 6:15 now that he's a little busier during the day. He's a terrible sleeper. You know,
sometimes when you hear that, there's obviously you always want to make sure there's not anything physiological that may be an issue. So one thing is when you go back to your primary care providers, to talk with him or her, just to say, have you done a sleep study yet? That's sometimes helpful. That may be something I would really recommend, because it'll give you really a good view of what goes on during the night. We find that it is the gold standard for determining if there's any kind of sleep disorder.
Okay.
Sometimes if that comes out to be negative, what it is you're right, breaking them of that habit, a child of that habit of getting up at night. My last one, and I had to the audience, I'd alluded to that before we got on. My last one, despite me being in sleep research, was probably my worst sleeper, and he would get up frequently at night. And despite any testing, everything was fine, and it is now. But through school age, he would get up probably one time at night. We really had to work with him to say, okay, you need to stay in bed. And I think that really helped him to work through that. But I would definitely talk with your primary care provider just to make sure that there isn't any reason why. Sometimes kids with sleep apnea, sometimes if they're getting up to go to the bathroom at night, you can look at some underlying cause.
So he always does get up to go to the bathroom, but I don't know that he gets up because he really has to go to the bathroom. He does go, but I often wonder if he just gets up and goes to the bathroom because it's his
habit
routine.
Now. Right.
And he often comes into our room.
Right.
Even though he passes his own bathroom, he likes to come into our room and wake us up to go to the bathroom.
So a few things even we recommend to even start to shut that down after everything's found to be, normal is that even for older kids, if you put a bell on their door and you hear it when they get up, then you're able to, get up and say, okay, once you're in the bathroom, don't come in our room. You need to go back to bed. And that kind of starts to break that cycle of waking up. And it's tough. It's tough. Once they're used to that, you gradually just really have to help him get that full night's sleep, because sleep disruption is just as tough as if you don't get enough sleep. And we know that. So it really does affect the quality of his sleep. So that's where I would really encourage going back and saying, hey, do we need to look at just a sleep study just to rule out any kind of issue?
So I am on the flip side with my daughter, and it's something that my husband and I are very careful of who we share this with, especially friends of ours, they have new babies. So our daughter, so I nursed the whole nine, and she would, wake up as a normal infant every couple hours to nurse, and we co-slept. She slept next to us. And then about 5-6 months, we moved her to a nursery, and we did sort of a modified cry it out. So we put her down at maybe 7:30, and at 1 she'd wake up. And logically, my husband and I were like, all right, she's probably hungry. So I would go in, nurse her, put her back to bed. And then at 3, we're like, all right, she's fine. So around 5-6 months, we did sort of I don't want to use the word cry it out, 15 minutes. My husband would go in, and it was 3 nights of that. And then that's all she wrote. So our daughter really loves sleep. So even she'll ask to go for a nap. She's been doing that since, 18 months. She'll go to the step and point to her crib and want to go to bed. Even a few weeks ago, I was at the beach, and a woman, she pointed to her stroller and said, I nap now, Mommy? And a woman came over. She's like, did I just see that? And I'm almost embarrassed to talk about it.
And lucky.
Yeah,
that's right.
So now I'm off for the month of July. And so normally, so as a freelancer, I make my hours. So, but typically I work 9 to 5. So on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So she has to get to the sitters by 9, and then, I pick her up at 5. So she's generally up-ish, sometimes a little later or whatever, about 8:45. Our sitter's very close by. And then she goes to bed at 8 and sleeps and takes a 3-hour nap. She just broke her 2 nap routine, I want to say
Just
3
about
months
2,
ago.
right.
Right. So now that we don't really have anywhere to go, except, I'll go to a bar class here and there, or I make plans once in a while, she sleeps till 9:30 in the morning.
Wow.
I know. I feel like I'm confessing something.
No,
but she sleeps
around 12 hours at night?
Correct. So
Good.
we put her down, and we've tried both. We tried putting her. I know people hate me. So people will, people have suggested maybe put her down earlier or put her down later. And my husband and I have tried both. We put her down at 7. We put her down at 9. But kind of at 8 o'clock, she asks. She starts sucking her thumb, and she points. She goes, "I take a nap." And we do a bed. She suffers from severe eczema, so we have to bathe her every night, and all that stuff. But we put her down, and about 9, I check the monitor. I make sure she's breathing, because there's definitely days that I'm like, oh my gosh, is she okay? And then she wakes up, and I think the only reason she wakes up is because she's hungry. She wakes up and wants to eat.
Right.
So, and then she'll wake up, and this month it's been, so she wakes up around 9:30. Come 11:30, she wants a nap. So then she'll sleep from 9:30 until 1:30, 1:45.
Wow.
I feel like this is like a big confession.
So she
here.
goes back to bed at 9:30?
9:30 she wakes up, 9:30.
Okay.
And
then goes
we
back
have
to bed at
breakfast.
1:30.
Well, now I call it brunch because it's ridiculous. And then she wants at around 11:30, she'll ask to take a nap. Sometimes I've been pushing it off because I find the absurdity of it. So I push it off to 1 to, and she'll wake up maybe 3:34. So I'm flexible. But at some point, I don't know whether, and she's healthy. Dr. Carton's, checked her
Oh
out.
no, that's a great schedule for a child.
I don't know a single, and I was the last of my friends to have a baby. And I have friends that are nurse practitioners, oncology nurses. And, I don't know anybody else's child who enjoys sleep as much as my daughter.
My first one was like that, and that's why when I ended up with my third one, I was embarrassed as someone who was doing a sleep fellowship to talk about the fact that I had a child who couldn't sleep. So celebrate that. That's great. And, even I want to encourage you, it gets better. I think they hit adolescence and some kids get better, but celebrate that sleep schedule. It's great for her developmentally. It's great for her eczema. We know that as children don't sleep, some of their what we call comorbid diseases, or those things they may have, asthma, eczema, any of those illnesses, even a child with type 1 or type 2 diabetes, their sugars can get worse in the presence of poor sleep. So it's wonderful for her eczema even that she's able to sleep.
Is it because she starts, as I talked earlier with you, she starts preschool in the
So you'll have to get her up in the morning.
So we have to be
the
at
challenge.
school at 9:15, fed, dressed, because normally now, she wakes up and my sitter feeds her breakfast.
Wow.
So literally it's just changing her and getting out the door.
Right.
But now we have to be in, and it's in Bryn Mawr from where we live, so it's about 10-minute drive.
So what time are you waking her up then? Do you
That's
plan?
what I want to know.
Okay.
So I don't want her morning. And she's the queen of she'll lay in her crib and I say, I'm like, she's meditating.
She's
She
an
just
easy
relax-
baby, right?
Yeah, I guess we can't complain. But I just don't know how then a morning routine for a child who does enjoy just lounging, so to speak. So how do I get her up, dressed, and ready? She has to be at school at 9:15.
So what I would recommend, and I'm sure Jay and Paul, you probably had to do that at one point or another with your young babies, and even you, Aryn, is give yourself a good hour to hour and a half. And I would start that in August. Just sometime in August, so you can get that pattern. I know that means you have to get her up, because then you'll really be able to see how does she react.
But
how do you need to adjust your time?
The only concern I have is then, so her school is from 9:15 to 11:15. She's used to then taking that. I don't want her to be falling asleep at school.
Right.
So I just...
Well, once you start that,
Okay.
once you start it a few weeks before school starts, and that's usually what we recommend, is to start any early mornings within at least 2 weeks before school starts. So you can get into a routine and she can get accustomed to the new schedule. I'm sure you found that with your boys as well, getting them ramped up to that early school time. They may not like it, but at least you'll get a good sense of how she's doing when she gets up in the morning.
We'll be coming right off from Disney World. So
Oh, my
that'll be-
goodness. Oh, yeah. So you're going to be up late, right? So I would give
Yeah,
her some
and up
days to
early.
get back into her routine. Yeah. Then even if you back it off over a week to 2 week period, I'd say probably every 15 minutes a morning, get her up a little bit earlier each morning. That'll get her used to...
So start
that
gradually.
early.
So
Yeah.
maybe a 15-minute...
So it's not like throwing ice water on her in the morning. You have to wake up now at 7 o'clock, right?
This is going to be something.
I would definitely do it gradually to get her into that kind of early morning. But just give her a couple days to recover from
Is
the
there
fun
such
of
thing
Disney
as
World.
too much sleep?
There is. That's a great question. Yes. So if you came here and you said that my 2-year-old slept 9 to 9, got up an hour, and then slept another 4 or 5 hours, that would require at least an evaluation just as much as someone who's up through the night. So we definitely know that children at certain ages need certain amounts of sleep. But we do know that sometimes there's things that are red flags for us. Like if you have a child who is coming home from school every day and they're having to take naps, usually past the age of 4 to 5, children don't need the nap if they're getting adequate sleep at night. So there are things that when we're talking to families or parents or caregivers, when we hear about, we start to ask more questions about that.
What is the amount of sleep, I suppose, for kind of each
age group?
Each age group, yeah. And is it... So, piggyback on that. So you have the amount of sleep, but then is it in the, let's say, how my daughter sleeps 12 hours straight.
Which is perfect for a 2-year-old. That's right.
Is it, and then the 3-hour nap.
Which is
so is it would you rather it done all at once, or it doesn't matter as long as you get the amount of hours?
As long as she it's important that she's getting good sleep. And some children differ. Some children only need, believe it or not, they've really, one of the things the National Sleep Foundation has really done in looking at the data, or when folks, and they've presented their recommendations, they've looked at the research and they found that some children end up needing less sleep. So some 2-year-olds only need 10 hours and they sleep a good nap in the afternoon and they're ready to go. Some need that 12 and sleep 2 to 3 hours in the afternoon. That's okay. That's not a problem. As they go through school age, we're finding now they still need minimally 8 to 10 hours. That's the recommendation through school. And then for adolescents, we really look to see, since most adolescents in this country sleep less than 7 hours a night, our recommendation is 8 to 9 hours a night is really what an adolescent sleeps. So they're kind of the rough numbers that we look for. Each child is different, but we anticipate that if they're not sleeping that, we may see, the sequelae of that, meaning that they're not able to focus in school as well. They may struggle just with frustration much more quickly, and that they're tired. So I think you have to look at each child individually and see what their sleep patterns are and work with them with that. But there is that range that we hope for each child.
I do want to get into some sleep hygiene questions.
Okay.
But before that,
I've had a lot of problems sleeping when I was younger. I guess I had a lot of sleep hygiene problems, I think, when I was in middle school and high school. And it always took me a really long time to fall asleep. And then I would get anxious about not sleeping. And then it would make it worse and worse. So I went to my pediatrician and he counseled me on how I should read before bed, not have screen time. And that really helped. So that was in middle school. And then I went to high school. And by the time I got home from all my activities and I had homework to do, there was no way that I could get to sleep before 10:30, 11. And then for my high school, I had to wake up around like 6:30. So I was falling asleep in 2 to 3 classes a day. So I think that a lot of other adolescents have that same problem. And at that point, I was a good sleeper. I was able to calm down. But the reality of it was I wasn't getting 8 to 9 hours. So what would you recommend to moms whose kids are tired and they're trying, but just the realities of the situation make it so that they can't get that allotted time that they need?
That's a great question. And I think first my question is, are you struggling? Do you have sleep difficulties now?
No, I've worked hard at it.
Okay.
No matter what, I always
you've worked
sleep
at it, right.
8 hours a night.
Good. And that's
this year I'm going to have some problems.
Yeah, you might, right, with starting call and all those fun things, right? So I think that the first thing is the reason why we encourage, even from infancy, to really work hard. So don't worry, don't stress. Eventually they'll get their sleep, right? Because you do want to encourage those healthy behaviors or sleep hygiene, Jay, that you mentioned. You'll hear that term from your pediatrician or other healthcare provider, non-physician healthcare provider. One of the things that we really do say, though, when they hit adolescence is, I will talk to a teen and say, whatever you do, the first thing I want you to do is take a deep breath and know you will finally fall asleep. And that's okay. So not to lay there and stress at night, I think, is the most important thing. That sometimes you just don't feel like falling asleep. It's that what we call night owl syndrome for the adolescent that truly is a characteristic of adolescence. What happens, though, is what you brought up, is the screen time, the busyness at night that starts at school age, where we have to learn to control for that. A few things I do recommend is, I find with many adolescents, and I'm wondering some of the parents and caregivers out there find the same, is that when I truly ask an adolescent, tell me your schedule when you get home, I find that when they're doing their homework, despite the loads that they get, they'll do their homework and then the phone buzzes and someone says, oh my gosh, did you get so-and-so's Instagram or Snapchat? I can't believe they sent that picture. And then they go and they look that up, and then they might go on Facebook, or they might go do, as I mentioned earlier, Pokemon Go. And all of a sudden now all that distraction comes into play. So what was maybe 2 hours of homework becomes 4 hours of homework. And there's not that focus. So I encourage families to really try to limit screen time. I encourage the adolescent, school age even, to start talking with them about, okay, we're going to take away as much computer time as we can, other than what you need for your homework. And then we'll focus on school. And then you can talk to your friends for a period of time, but really try to limit that technology at night. And then obviously caffeine. Are you a caffeine drinker, or were you in high school?
So my math teacher in high school saw me falling asleep, and she told me to start drinking coffee, and that's when I started.
Oh, those math teachers.
And I think she was right. I needed it at that time.
Who is she? I need to email her. Anyway, that's what we do find is after 12 o'clock is usually the recommendation to stop caffeine. So it's even paying attention to caffeinated products. I'm amazed at what's in, we have pantyhose that is impregnated with caffeine for ladies who want slimmer thighs. So, we have cookies that are impregnated with caffeine. Everything has caffeine added to it. The problem with that then is sometimes you don't know when your child picks something up and says, can we try this? And you buy it, you find out it has caffeine. Snickers, I think it's Snickers Go, has 60 milligrams of caffeine in it, the amount almost of a cup of coffee. So, when I see children at Wawa, I wonder if parents even realize when they pick up this Snickers with caffeine in it, that it has caffeine in it. So it's really limiting your caffeine intake for your children after 12 o'clock. So, in the morning, it's okay. I have my 2 cups in the morning and I'm good to go. But it's really limiting that because of how long it stays in our system. The second thing, again, is the multitasking and the technology at night. But the third thing is at some point is reminding your adolescent, I know you're going to have nights where you feel like staying up. And that's okay. You need to be able to get your sleep. You need to make sure you're doing all the steps with sleep hygiene in the beginning, like limiting screen time. But, there are those times where sometimes you can't sleep at night, and encouraging them, that's normal. So I don't know if your pediatrician told you those same things. I'm hoping they did. Fabulous.
So, by the way, speaking of that screen time, how about having the TV in your room and all that? Are there certain rules out there that
we have now in this country? Probably close to 50 to 60% of preschoolers have television in their bedroom. So I cannot stress enough to encourage parents not only to take it out of their children's room, but role model the behavior. And I always say it's hard to take a TV out of your school age or adolescent's room if you go in your room at 11:30 and watch Jimmy Fallon, right? Or Kimmel or whoever you like to watch. So I think setting up those healthy behaviors with sleep hygiene or getting into that healthy decompression at night where you limit all technology, including television. Did you have a TV in your room? Oh, good news. Tell your parents they get a gold star for that. That's great.
Do you ever teach meditation as a way of, because that's how I personally do it. And I maybe that's something now as you've been talking, I think, I work with Elizabeth, even though she's 2, she sees me, meditate and things like that. And we talk about calming our body and things. So body awareness and
mindfulness.
Yeah. Exactly. So what age do you recommend that being perhaps something?
That's great. You're starting now. I think Dr. Rosen, who is a great fan and I think an incredible expert at resources with alternate therapies, I think that's a great one to start even at a young age. If you can have children just aware of their bodies, aware of their emotional IQ, sometimes I think is a good way to put it, that really helps. Then they can learn some self-calming or self-soothing. Like you mentioned earlier about allowing your daughter to cry it out. We call that in sleep terms, we call gradual extinction. That's just it's a terrible term, isn't it? But that's the coined phrase. And they learn to self-soothe. So they learn to have an understanding of how to calm themselves down. So that's an important thing to start at a very early age.
She's now starting to vocalize, I'm mad. And what are you mad about? Well, I want that, like she's now being able to, kind of share with us.
Which is great.
Her emotions. Yes. It's great when it's, not dinner time or when I'm trying to get her in the car. But she definitely, I don't like that. Or I don't, so she's able to do that. And I think that that's kind of hand in hand.
I still get calls from my 24-year-old. What? I don't like that. So you're not.
So there's no end in sight.
Right. There is no end in sight.
But that's good to know that is something that can help them, even down the road to continue that. But is it at age 2 too young?
Oh, no. What do you think, Dr. Rose? What do you think, Paul? I think that's a great age to really start if they have the ability to understand how to start to. She probably has those self-soothing behaviors because you taught her how to calm herself down by putting her in the crib and letting her cry. So some of that's already what you unknowingly probably even did with her. So.
And she's a thumb sucker and she rubs her belly, so she knows what she does when she's frustrated. She knows kind of how to bring it down.
Yeah, I agree with Chris. I mean, getting all these healthy behaviors and habits, whether it's sleep hygiene or eating and nutrition or exercise, I think the sooner you get those habits going, hopefully they'll continue them. I mean, I think, Chris, we talked about in our practices, we're seeing all these kids with chronic fatigue, and kids are getting, in rheumatology, they come with muscle and joint pain. And then you start asking them the history that Chris would do is, how many Red Bulls are you drinking? And what time are you not playing video games anymore? And when the answers come back, well, I play video games till, 2 in the morning and I sleep until noon. And then it becomes pretty clear why their energy is so low and the sleep hygiene is really poor. And Chris, maybe you can comment further on this interrelation between energy and sleep hygiene.
Oh, I can. In fact, it's interesting, Paul, that you bring that up. I'll give you an example. My 15-year-old had a very severe fracture of the 2 lower legs of his bone in a basketball game in January. Thank you to Dr. Sukin Shaw, who did wonderful surgery and pinned his leg, but he couldn't do anything. So here's an athlete with all this energy. The only way he could do anything, because he couldn't get around and really couldn't weight bear, so he couldn't hang out with his friends for a good month, was to play video games and connect with his friends that way. And it did really set up this behavior of, okay, now I have all this energy and I can't go to bed at night. So it ties in with, I think, the good thing of your sons getting their exercises. They're getting that energy out, even though it's later at night. That does help them with just getting some of that frustration out, getting, the frustration of the day out, getting their energy from sitting in school all day. It helps to at least calm them. It helps us with our endorphins that are released, that are calming. But when you don't have that, what it can set up, especially with that screen time, is you're wide awake. You're playing all these high energy games like Call of Duty, or I don't even care if it's Pokemon or Pac-Man, you're still sound and noise. And instead of being a calming thing, it's a stimulant. So it even furthers that feeling of having all this energy and not being able to calm yourself down. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, again, we get all these teenagers coming in and the parents are really upset that they have no energy, they have no focus, they're having memory loss. And then when you really dive into
mood disorders,
mood disorder, and when you dive into the sleep history, you're finding they're not getting enough sleep, they're going to bed too late. And it's also, they don't have a regular wake time either. So their wake time and sleep time may have this wide range. So when I say to the kids, what time do you go to bed? It depends. Anywhere between 11 and 3. So they have this wide range of what time they're going to bed and a wide range of when they're waking up, depending if it's a weekend or weekday. And I think that variability really just messes up their cycle.
We're creatures of habit, if you think about it, and routine is a good thing. And it's a great thing for kids. And I even think I had sent a patient once to Paul, and she struggled terribly with sleep, had chronic pain, finally started to exercise, despite this severe pain syndrome, started to exercise, got outside, lost weight, is doing great. She's sleeping at night. And it's amazing, just simple, what Paul mentioned earlier, just simple, healthy behaviors, what it can do for our bodies. And she's a success with that.
So what exactly is sleep hygiene? I feel like...
Oh, that's a word. Yeah. So you'll hear it. And, it's funny because some people in the sleep world don't like that term. Some do. I think it's kind of a good way of saying sleep behaviors at night. So a sleep routine, you'll hear those words used interchangeably. And really what it's about is setting, as we talked earlier, setting those same behaviors on a regular basis, like you probably have done with your daughter, setting so she knows when that time hits, this is what I do. So I look at patterns before sleep that help the sleep process. So again, as Paul mentioned, even the more we can get children off of, for those in the audience, the more you can get your child off of the video games, out, not watching TV. The great thing about DVR now, tell them they can DVR their show and then they can watch it during the day or when they get home from school. And at least that protects their need to slow down in their time an hour or two right before bed.
Well, what we've learned from you, Chris, over and over again, is that sleep is incredibly important. It's important for your well-being. It's important for your mental health and your physical health. And that it doesn't come magically all the time by itself. You have to be intentional about preparing for it and about parenting for it. And it's something that if you do spend some time thinking about from the time the baby is born in the back to sleep and safe cribs and all that, which we touched on last time, to, how to manage an adolescent who's struggling with early school, that we're all trying to change a little bit, but the challenges of day-to-day life, soccer, school, etc. It's very important. And if you can do it right, you can set them up for good mental, physical health, better grades, happier kids that may even appreciate all the work you did as a parent.
That's
at some
right.
point.
That's right.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh,
Any
you're
final
welcome.
thoughts before we close this segment down? Paul?
Just getting what Aryn said about feeling guilty. And, I talked to a lot of
Don't do
parents
that, right?
where,
Don't do that.
if the sleep isn't perfect, parents really feel bad and they feel like they're not doing a good job. So I think, Chris, just, ending with some encouraging words.
Oh, I just want to encourage everyone. I mean, sometimes you just have a child with a personality and they struggle with sleep, just like they might struggle with being an eater that eats a certain way, the picky eater syndrome, any of those things. So you can't feel guilty. But I think what you can do, and this is from even my personal experience as well, anecdotally, as well as the knowledge I know from research, is set those patterns if you can. And you still may have somebody who gets up once or twice a night, but at least you can ensure that you're doing those things that you can manage.
I have a long way to go. I have a
No
lot of
guilt.
work to do.
No guilt, though, please. And I hope in some way for those folks that are out there that they don't have any guilt about.
And when he reaches puberty, he won't want to come out of his room.
That's right. You have to knock on the door.
Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. And,
Thank you. It was great to talk to everyone. Thank you very much.
To our listeners, if there's another topic you'd like us to explore in a future pediatric chat, you can send it to us by using the question portal on our webpage. And be sure to view our library for more pediatric chat programs. I'm Dr. Jay Greenspan, and thanks for listening.